Today on the channel, we're talking about a literary classic that inspired a generation of cartoonists. It's Captain Underpants, An Attack of the Talking Toilets. Let's check it out. Tra-la-la! Hey comic fans, welcome to Dangerous Comics, and today we're talking about Captain Underpants, and specifically Captain Underpants, An Attack of the Talking Toilets. Now I know this isn't the first Captain Underpants book, that is this one, just The Adventures of Captain Underpants, but this was my first foray into Captain Underpants. I got this book at one of the Scholastic Book Festivals when I was probably in first grade in 1999 or 2000, sometime around then. And this book just had a huge impact on me. It's just the sense of humor, the style, just kind of the comic language of it all. So this book was very important to me, and I just wanted to take a look at this and kind of look at it and how it uses comic language and really how I think this is a very important book to a lot of cartoonists my age, or just how it kind of spawned a new era or new kind of class of comic artists. So just want to look at this book, just love from the start. I love this hand lettering of the logo and just all the alliteration that he would use. So to go into this is created by Dav Pilkey. His name is would normally be spelled Dave with an E, but when he worked at Pizza Hut, they left it off his name tag, so he kind of went on from there as just D-A-V, Dav, or Dav Pilkey. This was published by Scholastic in their line of Little Apple, and I found this and bought it at one of those Scholastic Book Festivals, like I said. We can kind of look at the back, how it kind of has a couple shout-outs. The first book, I picked this up, and I guess I wasn't too concerned about needing to read the first one, and really you don't need to, because this book kind of just throws you right in. But we get some great imagery here. It's got some toilet humor, underwear humor. It's really speaking a kid's language. I'm looking at the spine here. And so this is my copy from back in the day, and the pages are even just falling out. So you have to bear with me as we go through this. But today's versions that they have of this, the book is in color, but originally it was this black and white, all just a line art, probably done with just pens and then ink wash for the tones. And you can see as you're going through this, there's a lot of white media added on as well, which is just really cool. Really great use of comic tools to tell this book for kids, and just kind of breaking down the style. And it's kind of a book that has comics within it as well. But we get this great kind of same images as we had on the back, but George and Harold and Captain Underpants being chased by a talking toilet. Gets you right what you could expect. And I think there's also some really great stuff in here where there's just jokes and everything hidden everywhere. It says this book is endorsed by PETT, and it's the People for Ethical Treatment of Toilets. So just kind of even using something like the indicia of a kid's book to kind of pack in the jokes. Who's this for? Is a kid gonna read this, or is this even for the parents that are reading this for the kids? I don't know, but I love it. So funny. And yes, we've got our chapters, but this is really what spoke to me as a kid, and what I think spoke to a lot of us as kids is just the use of comics in here, and kind of the use of crude comics. Sure, there's some other media being used here. There's ink wash and stuff. Maybe I didn't understand how he was accomplishing these kind of images, but there's stuff in here things are misspelled. The characters are just very done like a kid would draw them, but still kind of opening up the permission just to make comics. And this really spoke to me, and I started to make comics like this as a kid too. And I've seen my wife, who also studied graphic design, she also as a kid made Captain Underpants comics, and kind of copying the books. But these kind of comics that just kind of let you know, hey, you don't have to be drawing John Romita Spider-Man kind of drawings to do comics. You can just draw. You can just make comics to make comics. And that's what Harold and George are doing in this book, and I think it just really kind of gives kids and everyone just permission to make comics. And so even though this is the second book, we get a great catch up. We get it just like, we're going to get thrown into the story, but we also get a top secret truth about Captain Underpants. We get an origin story right away, and it's just kind of introducing us to the characters. We meet George and Harold. George is the writer, Harold is the artist, and that's something that I always envied as a kid. I wanted a friend that I could make comics with as well. But so we get that they would make comics about this superhero named Captain Underpants, and then they showed it to all their friends on the playground, and they thought it was so funny, except for their principal. And then so kind of getting into what happened in the first book, but they get this hypno ring. They hypnotize Mr. Krupp, their principal, kind of like Mr. Krupp, like Mr. Crap almost. And so just like toilet humor everywhere, just perfect for a kid. And they turn him into Captain Underpants. They hypnotize him, make him think he's Captain Underpants, and then he actually believes it, starts jumping out the window and trying to fight crime and everything. And we get kind of like the MacGuffin of like, he turns into Captain Underpants on a snap of the finger, and then to turn him back, you have to pour some water on his head. So just a great setup of like how this story could keep developing and, the kind of stories they could tell. I also just love this framing of like a comic, a book within the book. Also love how the panels kind of like warp with the pages, and it's just so cool. And then we even, such a great attention to detail of always getting the back cover of the comic too. And I just think that's so cool. Like, even just, they had their own imprint, Treehouse Comics Inc. The first book they show that they have this like really cool treehouse that they go and make comics in. Just kind of like the dream scenario for a kid. Get them skateboarding. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. And so just kind of like a lot of stuff that Dav Pilkey would play with is like funny words, just the funny illustrations, and just kind of, so we would always have this running gag of them like messing with the signs, changing what it says. So it originally said, "Come in to see our pretty armchairs," and they changed it to "Come and see our hairy armpits," and just, that really spoke to a kid, right? I still think it's pretty funny. And he has this really great just visual language that he uses throughout. Like, this isn't like any kind of texture that like you would identify. Like, that doesn't like scream like, oh, that's like a road or something. But just kind of like using this ink wash, and then he's just dabbing it with like whiteout. And you can really see the texture in there too, that he is like putting white media over this. And I really love how he's making splash pages, and there's really like illustrations on every page. And I just love like these kind of these mark making, like with the hair is that curly Q, the little eyes, the little nose, little simple hands. I worked on a YouTube show for a while called Pencilmation, and I brought a lot of these kind of lines in there as well, these kind of curly Qs. Originally, Pencilmate had eyes like this and stuff too. So very influential to my style and like how I thought of line making and stuff. But still just throughout, really great ink wash. I think it'd be interesting to look at this in color, how they did it. I've never really seen it in color, but really cool that this book has continued into today, and it's still being read, and they've updated it a little bit with color and stuff for a newer generation. But we get that there's an annual invention convention, which he's just like playing with like that alliteration, kind of like a piece of comics, like the Stan Lee alliteration is like throughout this book. And this is just such a cool transition of like, we get a illustration here, and then how it bleeds over to the chapter 3 of like their thought balloon is the next illustration here. And we get that they sabotaged the last years by gluing everyone's butts to their seats, and then a really great just transition back into the today's scene as it goes back to what George and Harold are thinking about. And Mr. Krupp is showing them that there's some fine print here that doesn't allow them to be involved in the convention. And they go in and they see Melvin, who's in here, making his invention. He's kind of like the dorky character, kind of like the little guy who's always going to be tattletaling on these two pranksters. Such a funny illustration. I love how his nose is like over the hair. So funny. So they come in and they're kind of like looking at Melvin's invention. It's the Patsy 2000, kind of like kind of like just I love how it has like a face. It's kind of a character in itself, the little light bulb, and it's supposed to kind of be like a scanner. But the idea is that they can put like a picture. You can put a picture in the top of it, and then it will scan something and make it real. And oh my god, that just spoke to me so much as a kid. And I think it's just such a cool idea, and especially it leans into like what this book is. It's like about these two creators, the writer and the artist, and like them wanting to be able to make their invention real. You know, the first book they did it by like actually turning their teacher into their superhero, and then here we get another kind of level of that where they have this invention that can literally like make their ideas real. Like how cool is that? There was a bad guy on the Beetleborg the Beetleborg, oh my god, if that's not hard to say. There was a bad guy on the Beetleborg show that could draw in his notebook, and anything he drew came to life, and that really spoke to me too. I think that just speaks to like a kid that loves to draw. And I was always drawing Captain Underpants. I actually got in trouble, and I think it was like third grade, for drawing friends of mine as Captain Underpants characters. I had the book that taught you how to draw Captain Underpants, but Captain Underpants is a little chunky and stuff, and I was drawing everyone like that, and it didn't go over too well. But it's just this book made me want to draw, and so they're saying, "Oh, it must have been a trick. There's no way you could have done that," and then they go in to start sabotaging all the inventions for the invention convention. And then we get into this, and it's even cool. They say they put India ink into this one, which is so cool because that's like literally probably what Dav Pilkey was drawing this with. But maybe he was using dip pens and a Hunt 102, but just using like kind of traditional comic media with some ink washes. So India ink is coming out here, coming all over people, and then it's some eggs are coming out of the ping pong servomatic. And I love how all the inventions kind of look, I guess they're all on these tables, but I like the kind of simple way he's breaking down what the inventions look like and everything. So everyone gets all the inventions all over them, and then they get busted. Mr. Krupp knows it was them. I love how his teeth become like these jagged points. It's just such good cartooning of how it goes from these like square teeth to the pointed teeth. Just really sells like that evil character. And then of course they're gonna have to do like a Bart Simpson kind of bit where they have to write on the board, "I will never do anything which angers my handsome and charming principal Mr. Krupp ever again." And so they break the rules by then, making a way that they could write it really quickly. So then they can get to the real thing they want to do, and that's make their next Captain Underpants comic. And so cool. That's just like, I wanted a friend like this, a friend that would be writing so I could be drawing. Such a cool dynamic between these two. So they make their next comic, and it's Captain Underpants, An Attack of the Talking Toilets by George Beard and Harold Hutchins. And just such great design for these talking toilets. I drew these a million times. I'm sure every kid did. It's just amazing. You've got the top of the toilet, like the lid is like the eyebrows with the eyes, and then the lid opening is the mouth. It's just so genius, so simple. But we get this story of a UFO comes, and so they're kind of setting up some of the things that are going to end up happening later in the story. But they're getting served toasted rat sandwiches, the principal's yelling, the gym teacher's being mean, and then all of a sudden the UFO appears and it zaps the school, and it makes all the toilets evil. They made all the toilets come to life. It made them evil too. And so there's some stuff in here, like Dav Pilkey actually, he suffered from, he was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia. And so he's got a lot of stuff in here of like, flipping letters, and it says in the back here, there's a little bio, and I always love this too, where it's like actually like a picture of him as a kid. Kind of another thing, just like as reading this as a kid, seeing this picture of a kid, it kind of just made it feel more obtainable, like I could do this too, right? And so it says, when he wasn't writing sentences on the detention board, he could usually be found sitting at his private desk out in the hallway. There, he spent his time writing and drawing his own original comic books about a superhero named Captain Underpants. It was always Dave's dream to publish a book about Captain Underpants, and now that dream has come true twice. So I just think that's super cool. I found that inspiring as a kid as well. Like I was like, oh, that could be me. But we saw them writing on the board, and now we see them making this comic too. So it's like you can definitely see that George and Harold are supposed to be kind of extensions of him. And so the toilets come to life, and then the toilets were hungry. Yum, yum, eat them up. And so they ate the gym teacher, and you can see the kids are all happy about that, because it's like every kid's dream, right? To kind of like have some power over their teachers. And then, help, the toilets just scratched somebody's car and ate up the gym teacher. And then Mr. Krupp is saying, Lord have mercy, was it my car? Oh, so fucking good. So funny. So funny. All right, so he's like, this looks like a job for Captain Underpants. And so Captain Underpants crashes down into the school. It's not like the same where it is actually their teacher. It's like he's kind of a separate entity in the story. But Captain Underpants ran to the storage room, gets some plungers, and then he stops them until the terrible Turbo Toilet 2000 comes out. And I love like this use of like 2000. Like this book came out in 1999, and I probably got it in like 99, 2000, but that was kind of like that number you'd put on an invention to make it sound futuristic or something. It's also just, kind of the time it was being made too. But so Turbo Toilet 2000 jumps out, I'll flush you. And so we're still like in this comic. We've been pages in. It's so good. They have this fight. He ends up giving Captain Underpants ends up giving him a wedgie with his wedgie power, and he pulls him back and shoots him at the UFO and saves the day. And the spaceship blew up, and all the toilets returned to normal. Hooray! And even the gym teacher escaped. Aw, man. The end. So it's just packing it with jokes and really kind of speaking to his audience really well. And then once again, ending on that final page. This was something that, I'll hold my place here, but this was something that that's something that has been done in comics, right? Comics within comics. I did this in Doom Skull 3. I also had Bag Boy gets given a comic, and it's like a comic about Doom Skull, and then kind of the rest of the comic happens kind of comic within a comic. I don't really do it as well as Dav Pilkey, but I also did like this part where you get pulled out of it. I have this page, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Doom Skull's pulling the comic back. But really inspired me in that way too. But yeah, I love this. I always in my comics also try to have like a back cover that works in there, and I think that kind of comes from this idea of like being shown this and being like, oh, there's some intention there as well. They're reading it and they're like, oh man, this is probably our best issue yet. We got to copy this thing so we can sell it. So they go and they try to go to the teacher's lounge, to make some copies of this book. But when they do, there's all the teachers are in there, so they're gonna have to find something else to make a copy. So they go to Melvin's Patsy 2000, and they put their the front cover on the scanner, and all of a sudden the Patsy 2000 starts freaking out, and they're like thinking, oh, Melvin just tricked us. This wasn't actually like doing what he said it was. But then all of a sudden out pops the talking toilets and starts chasing them, and we start getting kind of like the imagery we saw in the front and the back of this book. But they're running away. And some more of that great alliteration is in here. The invention, convention, detention, suspension. And so they come in, and Mr. Krupp is like, hi, you're suspended. I know you guys made all that mess. And then all the teachers, they like hate these two boys so much that they're all celebrating. They're having a party. We got some more of the jagged, pointy teeth about these evil teachers. And a lot of these teachers would go on to be, she would go on to be a villain in one of the later books too. They're like, let's throw a party in the gym because these boys are suspended. And then so they're like, no, don't go in the gym because that's where all the toilets are. And then all of a sudden, the gym teacher gets eaten by the toilet, just like he did in their comic. And this teacher, Miss Ribble, snaps at the toilet, and that is enough to trigger Mr. Krupp into turning into Captain Underpants. And these drawings are just so simple, but they're really just telling all the information you need. He's not really getting hung up on the backgrounds, and just like, I love just the balance of words to picture as well. I think as a kid it felt very readable, but then like he's really giving a lot of jokes in here that also have jokes that play off the images. Some more of that awesome dotted texture, and there's also like a dotted texture in Captain Underpants' cape. So just some cool use of texture. Good way to like bring in something to those ink wash, because he's kind of playing with black, white, and gray. But also a good way to kind of like set George and Harold apart as well. And I thought also as a kid there's really good use of like some diverse characters to actually see like a black and a white character be friends and kind of working together and everything like that. So really cool stuff. And so, he's running away to his office to change into Captain Underpants, and he kind of has like a Clark Kent kind of thing here where he takes off. He doesn't take off his glasses. He takes off his toupee and all of his clothes. Which Clark Kent also does, but he's got something under his clothes. All Captain Underpants has is his underpants. And so they jump out of the office, slide down the flagpole, which is kind of like their like bat cave, kind of like slide to the bat cave. They always are sliding down this the flagpole, and I love how the toilet is just jumping after him. He is going to grab all the clothes off this clothesline, and this kid sees him. He's like, Mommy, a little boy is looking out the window. Said a little boy looking out the window, a man in a red cape just stole our underwear. And then the mom, she's reading the How to Lose 20 Pounds in 3 Days. And it says, and he says, and now 2 boys are being chased by a ferocious-looking toilet with sharp, pointy teeth screaming, yum, yum, eat 'em up. And the mom says, yeah, right, laughed his mother. Just how gullible do you think I am? She's reading this book. Like, that's such a, I don't think I was laughing at that as a kid, but I thought that was really funny when I was reading this for this review. And so, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole book. I remember as a kid just dying at this. I'd read it with my dad, and I love how Dav Pilkey is using, like, you can really tell he's, like, designing this whole thing as spreads or for the page. He obviously doesn't have any ads going in here or anything, but he is building these, even, like, using the right and left pages to do a page reveal or a joke. And so we've got this thing as Captain Underpants got all the underwear that he's going to use, and Mrs. Ribble is running out, and she says, help me, they've swallowed every teacher in the whole building except me. And Captain Underpants says, don't worry, ma'am, I won't let them eat you up. Captain Underpants said as, and I love how we end on as, Captain Underpants said as a toilet ate her up. So good. Like, that is such a good use of a right to left page. That just killed me as a kid. I would just like laugh and laugh and laugh. And it is funny. It's a great use of a left page. And like, kind of like a first time I probably would have ever seen that like intentional use of page layout. So cool. And so we get just like, that's such a great joke. We then get to like an awesome action shot as Captain Underpants squares up about to shoot these underwear into the toilet's mouths. And he says, never underestimate the power of underwear, as he stretches it back, as he stretched and shot underwear into the waiting mouths of the talking toilets. And so it doesn't work, but they're like, oh, I think I know something that will make them really sick. And they run, and we get this little sign showing that they're running to the cafeteria. And also just great use of imagery, how much we need to see to get this whole picture. Just a little bit of the stairs, just this sign, and then just a little bit of the toilet coming after them. But so they come into the cafeteria, and it's creamed chipped beef to the rescue. And I love how this is like supposed to look like poop. Like, it's supposed to look horrible and disgusting. And then of course they're gonna start using it in like a slingshot method in the underwear to like shoot it into the toilets' mouths. And so they're sneaking up, and then they start blasting the toilets. The toilets are happily eating it, but then it's enough to make them sick, and they start to barf up all of the teachers that they've eaten. Kind of like they have, everything that was set up in the comic that the kids wrote then comes to be in the real life as Captain Underpants helps them out. And they're like, oh, they're alive, but unconscious, but alive. Wow, said Harold, that was easy. Too easy, said George. And then he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, well, when we scanned the comic, all these came to life, but not the Turbo Toilet 2000. We haven't seen him yet. And then all of a sudden, the Turbo Toilet 2000, and he comes crashing through. And just the Turbo Toilet has an amazing design. I think he looks fantastic. He uses the top lid of the toilet the best as this like angry unibrow, and then has kind of like just these great like robot designs on with the 3 spikes in the hand. I definitely drew like every robot like this after reading this comic. This is an amazing spread too. I love how it's you get like this page is all the Turbo Toilet just looking so cool, so menacing, the shadow behind him, and then he's pointing at these guys who are just in the corner, kind of looking tiny compared to him. And then we get Captain Underpants jumping into action, and So we've already got like Dav Pilkey introducing a bunch of awesome comic language, but then now we get this Flip-O-Rama, which introduces like animation into this comic, which I had never seen before either. And I love this like warning: the following chapter contains intense scenes following a man in his underwear battling a giant toilet. Please do not try this at home. And so we get this awesome introducing Flip-O-Rama. Here's how it works. And we get like just this great, I'll read this for us. In the past, literally dozen of epic novels that have been written that have changed the course of history. Moby Dick, Gone with the Wind, and of course, Captain Underpants and Attack of the Talking Toilets. The only difference between our novels and those others, Brand X novels, is that ours is the only one that cares enough to bring you the latest and cheesy animation technology. And so this like this tongue-in-cheek way of handling this is just, it really spoke to me. It's so unique. We get more of that like dotted pattern in the background with this amazing hand lettering. It just makes it feel like this is something that you could be drawing as a kid. And now you know how to make animation. And it's like, I love how they give you this step-by-step how it works, the 3 steps to do it, and then it says, for extra, and this is kind of hard to read, but down here it says, for extra fun, try adding your own sound effects, which, you know, you got to do it. But I love how it's got like their 3-fingered hand, a little outline for that, and it tells you to put your thumb here, and then we get the wedgie power versus potty power, and you're just supposed to flip, and you get this amazing animation of it. And it's kind of like how traditional animation used to be done, you know, where they would be doing these frame by frame of actually drawing on paper with like a stack, and then they would be flipping back and forth to make sure that the animation was lining up. Oh my god. And so it's just so amazing. Like, we get the wedgie, we get the eyes are closing, the hands are going open, the mouth, the feet are going up. Oh, it's just amazing. And then so we just get all these different action scenes, and then of course you got to have Captain Underpants get a little hurt too. Oh no, the potty power punch prevails. And so Captain Underpants gets smushed. The kids are shocked. So good. And we'll go all of these because they're just so good. And the carnivorous commode captures the captain. And this also kind of feels like Adam West, kind of like Batman kind of terminology, or like the alliteration in there too. But I love, like, you know, he's celebrating. He swallowed him. And he's stomping his feet. Oh, just so cool. It just kind of made it like I'd never understood how animation would have worked before I saw this too, you know? And then, of course, he's like holding his belly as he swallowed our captain whole. I thought this was a really cool detail of where he even has a little bit of the black, like he did a ink wash here, but then was still dabbing for the black polka dots in here, almost like a big spaced out like Kirby dot kind of thing. But so they Harold and the purple Harold and the purple ballpoint pen. So now they're gonna have to strike back, and they get an idea. They're gonna go back to that Patsy 2000, and they are gonna have to create a new character. They have the Patsy 2000 is like super beat up. They're hoping it's still gonna work. And they made this new character called the Robo Plunger, and they're gonna scan it again. The Incredible Robo Plunger. You know, so it's just cool. It's like still kind of introducing to like the idea that like, oh, you could make photocopies of your comics. Like you could go to the library, make some photocopies, and maybe the photocopier at the library isn't going to make you a real life thing, but you can actually make a physical comic that you could show your friends. So I just think it really introduced a lot of great ideas to kids of how they could make comics. And so now we get another Flip-O-Rama chapter. And notice, the following chapter contains terribly naughty scenes depicting a giant toilet getting its shiny hiney kicked. All violence was carefully monitored by the PETT, People for Ethical Treatment of Toilets. No actual toilets were harmed during the making of this chapter. So, you know, we even get a payoff for that joke in the indicia that I pointed out. We get some more Flip-O-Rama as this new robot is beating up the Turbo Toilet 2000. The Incredible Robo Plunger to the rescue. And the Incredible Robo Plunger kicks the TT 2000's tushy. I love how the lid pops up as he kicks it. And the kids are laughing. Their eyes are opening and closing. And then, of course, you know, has to use his plunger to get Captain Underpants out of there. We get a high five in there. And I love the TT 2000's face as he's getting plunged. And then he gets Captain Underpants out of there. But of course, we get the final payoff that, a snap turns him into Captain Underpants, but getting wet turns him back into Mr. Krupp. So of course, going into the toilet is going to turn him back into Captain Underpants. And I love the cartoony language of now the Turbo Toilet 2000 has X's for eyes, as do the other ones because they're dead because of the food they ate and because he got his hiney kicked. And Mr. Krupp comes out and he says, "What happened here? The school has been destroyed. The teachers are all unconscious, and I'm standing here in my underwear." So he gets dressed again because the kids thoughtfully grabbed his clothes out of his office and kept them in their backpack. They also brought his toupee, which, was very kind of them. And so they let him get dressed and they said, "We have a deal. We'll fix everything if you do what we want you to do. We have something in mind." He says, "I'll let you, whatever you say, just you fix the school and everything." So they get their robot, they give him some instructions and he fixes the school. They say, "Yeah, fix up the school too and use your laser eyes to repair all the broken windows and stuff. And when you're done," said George, "take all the evidence and fly it to Uranus," which is that's so good. So good. "And don't come back," said Harold. And then this is such a great chapter too. Chapter 22, to make a long story Chapter 22, to make a long story short, the robot obeyed. And then we just get this great DeLuca effect of him doing all these things at once, and they're just in shock and awe as it's happening. And then he flies off to Uranus, and all the teachers are happy. But then their payback and what they were asking for is that they get the payoff, so the payoff of winning the invention convention was that you're going to get to be principal for the day. So they now get to be principal for the day, or principals for the day, because they made this deal with Mr. Krupp. And then they throw this really awesome carnival with hot dogs, cotton candy, and some pizza, and just such a fun style. I feel like there's some a lot of cartoon comic language in here. I feel like there's some peanuts, just a lot of really great shorthand in here as well. But I love the ink wash. I love we get more of that polka dot pattern in the background. I think that just really kind of it really that style and that polka dot really kind of becomes iconic for what Dav Pilkey is doing with his style here. But who as a kid didn't love when you get to get those kind of festival days, or when you get to have a day off? So just really speaking to kids with this, they're getting a sundae and some pizza. And then all the teachers have to write on the board, pull Bart Simpson for them too. And so Miss Ribble is saying, "I will stop being such a crab. I will stop being such a crab." Melvin has to do it too. "I will not be a tattletale." The gym teacher, "I will chill out." This teacher's, "I will get a life." And then Mr. Krupp has to say, "I will be very, 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 very nice to George the Great and the Amazing Harold." And of course his is the longest that he has to write. It's so funny. And he's like, "How did you pay for that festival that the kids are having? How did you pay for all that ice cream and pizza?" And they say, "Oh, well, we sold your desk and your fancy chair." And he gets mad again. And then as they run out of the room, Miss Anthrope snaps her fingers at them. And then that snap, his toupee flies off and he runs to his office to change to Captain Underpants again. And then how every book ends, they say, "Oh no," said Harold. "Here we go again," said George. "Tra-la-la," says Captain Underpants. And so just such a great cliffhanger, more of that comic language of there's never an end to these stories. The story continues. Their comics always had the end at them, but the true Captain Underpants story never ends, right? It just leads us to the next adventure, which is just amazing. And so we end again, we showed this a little bit about the author. So cool. A lot about his some other of his books that he wrote. And then the next one that would be coming out was Captain Underpants and the Invasion of the Incredibly Naughty Cafeteria Ladies from Outer Space and the Equally Evil Lunchroom Zombie Nerds. So just such great titles, and I love how he would do the hand lettering for those too. They would have these prizes and stuff. I definitely wrote in for these. I think I cut one of these out for the contest, or maybe I made a photocopy so I didn't have to ruin my book. But this has been Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilets. I really wanted to look at this because I honestly think this is a really important comic, a book for kids of my age, kids that were like me that grew up in the 90s, 2000s, and I think how we kind of got this introduction to comics language and just kind of were given the permission to draw and the permission to make comics like George and Harold. And they didn't have to be perfect. They didn't have to be like Marvel or DC. They didn't have to be anything like that. They could be like Captain Underpants. And if you would like to kind of see some of my books as well, I am a working cartoonist as well. I've got books like Doom Skull, which is about an ex-supervillain that works in a grocery store with his minion Bag Boy. Very Captain Underpants inspired. I've got X-Ray, which is a collection of like my 4-panel web comics that I would have posted on like Instagram or other places online like that. I've got some horror zines like The Passenger, just kind of different kind of style treatments, different, just having fun making comics. Sleepless Sights is another horror zine. I was recently had a story published in Revenge of the Holozine Volume 5. This was a successful Kickstarter. I had a story in here about my characters Fish and Chip. I'm going to be doing more stories with them, but you can see the first volume of that here. And then one of my newest ones, Jiggly, which is about a piece of gum that God spits out. All available on my website, link in my description below. But I'd really appreciate if you could support me, like, subscribe, check out my other videos on the channel. It really mean a lot. But until then, remember to think and read dangerously. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.